Good afternoon, I'm Miss Patterson and I'm the Deputy Head of Maths here at the Reach Free School. Just to get us started, I want you to have a think about this question. So what memories do you have of maths from when you were at school? Was it largely a positive experience? Did you enjoy your maths lessons? Is there anything in particular that jumps to your mind when you think about your lessons that you had? And I just want you to think about that whilst we go through this presentation. And I will come back to it at the end and give you an idea of the memories that we want our pupils here at the Reach to have when they think back on their maths lessons in years to come. So just to get us started, I will look at the long-term plan for Key Stage 3 and what is being covered in Year 7 and Year 8. So in Year 7, we aim to kind of recap those topics covered at Year 6 level. So things like number, fractions, ratio, recovering all those, making sure the foundation is solid, but also then introducing new concepts that they won't have seen before, such as algebra, graphs, probability, and also looking a little bit at some statistics. So that foundation being laid in Year 7 then allows us to build on that in greater depth in Year 8. And you'll see that between Year 7 and Year 8, there is quite an overlap on topics. So number appears again, area appears again. You've got quite a few that appear, as well as some such like circles, Pythagoras, 3D shapes that are new. So those topics that appear again, we are now going into those in greater depth than we would have done in Year 7 and extending our knowledge based on the foundations that we put down in Year 7. So it's really important that those Year 7 foundations are solid so that we can build on them in Year 8. What we will also do with those topics is interweave them together. So we will take some algebra and we might look at fractions that have algebra involved. We will take some fractions and find areas and volumes using fractions and combine topics together so that pupils are deepening their understanding of those different concepts in a more problem-solving way. So that is the overview of our Year 7 and Year 8 curriculum. Pupils also have access to this, but just in a way that is a lot easier to follow. So here we've got our Year 7 and our Year 8 learning journeys, and they show a lot more of an in-depth kind of roadmap that pupils are going to be following. So as well as starting off with what the topic is, it shows a little bit more of a breakdown on what they're going to be covering. It also tells them where there is a low-stakes quiz coming up, where there is that PLC lesson coming up, where there's a dirt lesson, and maybe where there's an assessment at the end of a half term. All of those things I will talk about in a second. So pupils do have access to this and they can follow along with it as we are going through the year. So looking now more in depth at the different things I mentioned there. So we'll start with our PLC, which is this document given out to pupils to stick into their books at the beginning of every topic. And it gives them a little bit more of a breakdown on what they will be covering and the skills that they need to be able to do by the end of the topic. So for this one, it's your averages and data as an example. And we start by finding the mean, the mode, median and range. Then we start looking at tally charts, different representations, and then we start interpreting them and taking it to the next level of understanding and drawing different representations, not just reading and finding information from them. So this PLC is stuck in people's books at the start, and it also gives them an idea of some of the key terminology that they need to know and that they will meet throughout this topic. They need to be able to understand what it means and how to use it when they are talking about the skills or explaining what they have done in a particular question. At the end of the topic, we then go back to this PLC and we make sure that we are able to do everything that is listed there. So we will put a lesson aside for a PLC lesson and pupils complete questions related to each of these 8 skills, for example. They can then tick whether they're happy with this skill, or if they feel like they need a little bit more work, they can put themselves in the other sad face box, because that will then help direct them towards the revision that they need to do. It will help narrow down the topics that they might need to recover for their assessments, which I will talk about in a second. So in terms of actual lessons, during lessons we regularly purple pen. So at the end of the do now, at the end of any independent work that we complete, we always purple pen our answers so that we can immediately reflect on anything we don't understand and immediately correct any mistakes that we make before moving on to the next concepts or taking that concept a little bit further. So here's an example on the right about how a pupil purple pens their work and showed what their correction should have been. Okay, and that allows them to reflect on how they can improve that answer for a similar question the next time around. Then we've got our low stakes quizzes. So after a few of those concepts within a topic or at the end of a topic, we will give pupils a low stakes quiz to complete. And that's to inform us and also them how they are finding that topic and any areas within that they need to work on. So for example, this is the one related to the statistics and data topic, and you will see that it's a multiple choice quiz on a Google form that they complete in lesson. Those questions are designed so that pupils fall into traps that they might fall into with common mistakes that people make regarding those topics all of the time. We as teachers then go away, look at what traps they've fallen into, and we then go back and work on those with them in lessons. And we do that reflection work in our dirt lessons or green feedback sheets that may be stuck in pupils' books. So once we look at our low stakes quizzes, we look at pupils' books, we kind of look through the work that they've been doing on this topic, we will pick out those key mistakes that the class are making or that pupils are making so that we can recover those. We can address any issues that we might be having, and then pupils get another chance to attempt work based on those. So here, for example, are the 4 mistakes from that quiz that most pupils made, and we went through the examples as a class, and they had then got a chance on your turn to practice that independently again, so that they understood how not to make that mistake again. So that comes from a green feedback sheet lesson or a dirt lesson, and they also get a sheet like this, where it talks about the examples that we've just done on the left, and then it gives them extra tasks to do on the right based on their personalised score in the quiz or something that their teacher may have noticed in their book. So there's a choice of activities that they can do there to improve and do some reflection on their own work. And then, of course, you've got your extension activities to push and deepen and challenge that knowledge from this topic a little bit further. So at the end of every half term, we then have our assessments that will cover 1 or 2 topics that we have done that half term. And again, that just gives us a bit of an idea as to how pupils are finding it, how pupils have found that topic, and we can then give them some advice and some dirt lessons on how they can improve those topics as well. We also then have our end of year assessments, which will take place in around June time, where pupils will set 2 papers, 1 calculator, 1 non-calculator, on everything they have covered that year. And that just gives us an idea of how solid those foundations are to build on for the next year. So that is kind of an overview of what goes on in terms of in lessons and then in terms of assessments. But what can you do at home to help pupils in addition to what we do in lessons? So my first piece of advice is be positive. So in terms of maths, we can be quite open in saying, I'm not very good at maths, I'm bad at maths, it's fine. And we wouldn't really say that if a pupil asked us if we could help them to read, or if a pupil doesn't really advertise the fact that they're not very good at reading or writing. So we need to make sure that we as parents and as teachers are positive about maths, and we encourage pupils to look at it in a positive light and go into it with a positive attitude. That will encourage them to be resilient, it will encourage them not to give up, and it will encourage them to get over those barriers that they may face. As well as this, we need to encourage everyday maths. We need to point out to our pupils where they can see maths in the everyday world, such as getting them involved in cooking, baking, getting them involved in anything to do with going shopping, budgeting, anything to do with taxes, looking at paying bills, anything such even telling the time. Those pointing out everyday maths in everyday life will really help pupils see that maths is a subject that comes up everywhere, and it's not just a subject that they have to study at school. As well as this, we need to praise the effort, not just the result. So sometimes in maths, we've got to try and try again to get to that final answer. And the resilience not to give up after your first attempt when you get that wrong answer, that's what makes the difference of being good at maths and being not so good at maths. It's the hard work, and it's trying over and over again and recognizing that failure is part of getting to that success. We can't learn if we don't make mistakes. And sometimes pupils don't realize that. So we need to praise the effort and not just the final result of getting to that correct answer at the end. In addition, we also need to make sure that we are encouraging our pupils to use the resources available to them when they are at home. So everything that we do is on Google Classroom. They will have different topics in their classroom depending on which unit they're studying, and it will have every single lesson that they have covered in school right there for them to refer back to. So if they miss a lesson because they're absent, if they feel that they struggled with it and they need some more work, if they are revising for an assessment, they can always go to Google Classroom and use these lessons to retry the questions again. Make sure they can do them at home, and those lessons will always be there. As well as having that on Google Classroom, we will also have homework posted. So homework is always on Google Classroom for them to complete. It could be something that they are completing on another online platform. It could be something that they are completing as a worksheet, but keeping on top of pupils and making sure that they are doing the homework and making sure they're doing it to a good standard will allow them to become independent learners. So when pupils complete homework at home, getting a score of 20% when they've done it in 2 minutes probably wasn't the right way to go about it. So we need to make sure that we're checking, we need to make sure that we're teaching pupils how to go and be independent, how they can use Hegarty Maths and all the other resources such as Google Classroom to check what they should have been doing, get some help and try it again. So making sure that homework is done to a good standard, making sure that they've spent the appropriate amount of time on it and actually gone and sought some help if they need it, and then handing it in on time is going to be massive in terms of making them independent learners so that they can succeed in every subject and not just in maths. So those resources I was talking about, as well as Google Classroom, we've got Hegarty Maths, we've got TT Rockstars, we've got Dr. Frost Maths, and we've got Oak National Academy. Now, Hegarty Maths, TT Rockstars, and Dr. Frost are all resources that we have that pupils have their own login for. So pupils can go on, attempt the tasks, watch the video if they're not sure. Even if it's not set as homework, they can watch the videos to help them with a topic they may be revising on. Okay. I would also say in terms of times tables, that is the foundation of any topic. If you are struggling to do your times tables in the middle of a difficult concept, that concept is going to seem a lot more difficult than it should be because we're struggling with that basic idea of our times tables to start with. So it's really important that we make sure pupils are fluent with their times tables, and TT Rockstars is a great way of practicing them. Oak National Academy is also available in terms of links on our Google Classrooms, so that if pupils do miss a lesson or pupils do need that extra bit of support, they can go on there and go through their lessons as well as the lessons they have on Classroom to make sure that they get any help or extra resources that they need. If your pupil or your child doesn't remember their login for any of these, please just contact myself or get them to ask their classroom teacher, and we'll be happy to change the password or just give them a reminder of what their login is. So these resources are here, they are free, so I really encourage you to get your children to use them at home to support and even deepen their understanding and deepen their learning. So back to that question that we thought about at the start on what were your memories of maths. The memories we want our pupils to have of maths at the Reach Free is that they enjoy them. We want them to look at maths not just as a subject that they have to understand because they're doing a GCSE in it, but we want them to see it as something that is essential and part of the everyday world that they live in. Pupils tend to dread mathematics because they come into it looking at it as a set of rules, a set of steps and processes that they need to follow to get a right answer. But really, it's more about the resilience, the problem solving, the reasoning, the critical thinking skills that they will develop along the way that will make them lifelong learners, that will make them able to go out into the real world and use those transferable skills in every job that they come across. That is the essence behind mathematics. And we don't want them to look at it in a way that they're coming into a classroom just to learn algebra that they might never use again. We want them to see all the other things that mathematics gives them and not just the right answer that they're aiming for. So when you talk to your children about mathematics, talk to them about it in a positive way, in a way that they see it's part of the everyday world and it's nothing to dread, that it's a beautiful thing, that they will come across in many different parts of their lives, but maybe just not represent itself in the way that they always think. Thank you.